In this video, we're going to be working on solving simple equations. The simple equations just means that we are solving for x. To start off with a fairly simple one, we're going to look at 75 over 125 times 5 equals x. So we're just multiplying here. X is on the outside, so x is our unknown. We're just looking for the value of x. So in order to do this, I just want to put my 5 over 1, so I'm multiplying a fraction times a fraction. And remember, when we're multiplying by multiplying fractions, we can cancel within the fraction. We can cancel across or diagonally. We can, or we can just multiply straight across and reduce our fraction. And since most of my students like to multiply straight across, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to multiply 75 times 5, and I get 375. And then 125 times 1 is 125. So then I take the 375, I divide it by 125, and I get 3. So x equals 3. So it's fairly simple as long as you do not overthink it. To do one that's just a little bit more difficult, I'll use that word. Let's look at one same type of problem. I'm going to change colors here so I can show it. 0.35 over 2.5 times 4 equals x. So this time it just has decimals. We're okay with decimals because we can multiply and divide by decimals using a calculator. So I'm going to put 4 over 1. And then again, I'm going to multiply straight across. 0.35 times 4. And I get 1.4. 2.5 times 1 gives me 2.5. If you want to do this by hand, then to get rid of the decimals, to divide by decimals, I need to make the denominator a whole number. So if I move the denominator one place, that is a crazy color, one place to the left, I have to move the numerator one place to the left. So that will give me 14 divided by 25. And so I'm going to go over here on my little side and do my scratch paper. 25 goes into 14. Well, 25 doesn't actually go into 14. So I put my decimal at the end of my number and put a 0 up top, and then I'm going to add a 0. So 25 will go into 140 5 times, because 5 quarters gives me $1.25. I think in terms of money, especially when it's a 25. So that gives me 125. I subtract, and that gives me 15 left over. So I haven't zeroed out, so I'm going to add another 0. And then I'm going to say, okay, 15 goes into 150 6 times. 6 times 25 is 150. And I get a 0. So then my answer is 0.56. And that is what x equals. So let's look at another one, just a little bit harder. So I'm going to look at 75% divided by 60% times 1.2 equals x. So one thing when we're dealing with percents, and I should have wrote in a different color, we can cancel out our percent signs because I've got a percent on top and there's percent on bottom. So that cancels. And then I'm left with 75 over 60. And I'm going to put my 1.2 over 1. Again, you can reduce within the fraction, or you can reduce diagonally. I'm just going to leave it like it is. I'm going to multiply 75 times 1.2. And I get 90. 60 times 1 is 60. And then when I have a 0 on top and a 0 on bottom, they cancel. It's like dividing both top and bottom by 10. And that leaves me with 9 over 6. And then to reduce that, I know 3 goes into both of them. 3 goes into 9 3 times, 3 goes into 6 2 times, and I'm left with 3/2. You can write it as a mixed number, 1 and 1/2, not 1 1/3. But unless the question tells you to write it as a mixed number, you only have to write it as the fraction. If you want to write it as a mixed number, that's fine. I'll give you credit for it. Now let's look at number 3. This is the one that really has a tendency to mess with people. It's when I have a fraction over a fraction. So I have 1 over 100 divided by 1 over 150 times 1.2 equals x. So we're going to only work with the complex number, the fraction divided by a fraction. Because the best way to work this one is just one small step at a time. So the fraction in the middle, the fraction bar in the middle, this one right here, means to divide. So I've got 1 over 100 divided by 1 over 150. And then I want to use the keep, flip, change, or the KFC, where I keep the first fraction just like it is. I flip the second fraction using the reciprocal, so I've got 150 over 1, and then I change my division to a multiplication. And then I'm going to multiply, so I have 150 over 100. And again, I've got zeros that will cancel. So a 0 on top will cancel a 0 on bottom. And that leaves me with 15 over 10. And I can reduce that down to 3 over 2. So again, I can take and change this to a decimal, which it would be 1.5, or I can leave it as 3/2 and put the 1.2 over 1 and multiply across. But since I've got it as the decimal, then I'm going to multiply it as, 1.5, I can't write. Let me erase that and try that again. So I have 1.5, and then I'm going to go back up to my original problem times the 1.2. So 1.5 times 1.2 is 1.8, and then that's what x equals. So that's solving simple equations.